Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to your story time. Today I'm sharing two Irish tales because St. Patrick's Day is coming up really soon. So I'm glad you can join me. Finn McCool, the Giant of Knockmany Hill by Tomie de Paola. Finn McCool is a very famous giant in Ireland and Scotland too, always up to some mischief. So it's an old tale, and it's retold and illustrated by Tomie de Paola. So when you have a famous person or character, let's say, there can be many stories that are made up about them, and you could make up your own story too. Wouldn't that be fun? This is published by Holiday House, New York. Thank you, Holiday House. In olden times, when Ireland's glens and woods were still filled with fairies and leprechauns, giants too lived on that fair Emerald Isle. One of the finest of those big folk was Finn McCool, who was wed to the lovely great lass Una. I guess in that picture, it's the fairies and the leprechauns. How sweet. Finn McCool and his wife Una made their home on the top of Knockmany Hill. I've been to Ireland, but I've never been to Knockmany Hill. Now, as any good giant, Finn McCool had his work to do, so he was often away from home. Lovely Una didn't seem to mind, for there was plenty to keep her own hands busy, spinning, knitting, and even giving a pretty touch to their great house. Life was very pleasant indeed. One morning when Finn McCool was busy working with his kin building a causeway to Scotland, the word came that Pullen was coming. He's a big giant. Cuchulainn was a giant too, and without a doubt the strongest in that part of the world. When he walked, the very earth trembled, and with one blow of his fist, he had flattened a thunderbolt so it looked like a pancake. He was so proud of that feat that he kept the thunderbolt in his pocket to show all just how strong he was. Every giant in Ireland had been given a good beating by Cuchulainn. Every giant, that is, except Finn McCool. And Cuchulainn swore by the green that he would never rest, day or night, winter or summer, until Finn McCool was added to his list. What a big dope going around beating up buddies. So far, Finn had been smart enough. He kept moving about whenever he heard that Cuchulainn was in the neighborhood. But this time, Cuchulainn was sure to get him. So Finn left the causeway and sped off for Knockmany Hill, his house and his darling Una. Finn, my love, said Una, greeting him at the door. What brings you home so early from your work? The chance to get a sight of you, my sweet thing, said Finn. Since he was as honest as the summer day is long, he added, and to keep out of the way of Cuchulainn, he's after me. Una soothed her husband. She brought him his slippers and lit a pipe for him. She stirred up the peat fire so it would be cozy. Then she set down a huge mug of stout and cut a gigantic slab of soda bread for her dearie. Don't you just want to have a slab of soda bread right now? Finn, husband of mine, enough is enough, said Una as gently as she could. For years, you've been hiking around from one place to another to avoid this Cuchulainn. Why, you even built our house high on this windiest of hills so you'd be able to spy him coming. You'll not get a moment's rest until you stand fast and face him. I'll be getting plenty of rest if I stand fast and he knocks me down. I don't have the heart to face a man who can make a young earthquake just with his walk, and who carries around a flattened thunderbolt in his pocket just to prove his strength. At that, Knockmany Hill gave a little dance. "He's coming," said Finn, his face turning a fine shade of pale green. "Now hush," said Una, "and give me time to think. Do you worry that I won't do all I can to help you settle this matter once and for all?" So when Cuchulainn walked, the hill shook. It shook the picture frame, and it shook a stool over. Do you know anyone who walks that the house shakes? Maybe your dad or a big uncle. Una then worked a charm the fairies had taught her. She took 9 woolen threads, each a different color, and braided them into 3 braids. She put one around her right arm, one circling her heart, and the third around her right ankle. Now, nothing she did could fail. So there it is. Look at over her heart. There's a circle, and one on her arm and one on her ankle. And there's the fairies dancing in her hand. Next, she sent around to all the neighbors to borrow 21 iron frying pans. She hid them in 21 loaves of bread that she baked on the fire in the usual way. She set them in the cupboard with some bread she had baked the day before. Then she took a pot of milk and made it into a fresh wet cheese, and put it along with some white stones at the foot of the cradle she had made up. So there's the bread. Look at that. Look at that. You can see the frying pan sticking out of that loaf of bread, and that one too. And there's the stones. "Now, my darling," she said, handing Finn some baby clothes, "put these on and do everything just as I'm about to tell you. And remember," she said at the last, "Cuchulainn's strength lies in the brass finger he has on his right hand. Now, quick into the cradle, because I hear that man mountain at the door." "All right, woman," bellowed the giant at the door. "Where's that coward, Finn McCool, that I've been chasing after all this time?" "Well, well," said Una with her sweetest smile. Now, isn't it a shame Finn was off working on the causeway when some important family affair called him away? But he'll be home by tea time, so why don't you just come right in and sit down? Poor Finn trembled in the cradle. Look under the cradle. There's some leprechauns, a little cat, and 2 sheep. It's pretty funny. "See this?" Cuchulainn said, pulling what looked like a pancake out of his pocket. "This was a thunderbolt until I caught it and flattened it. And that's what I'm going to do to Finn McCool, too." "Tisk, tisk," said Una. "That may not be as crazy as you think. Finn McCool's a big broth of a man. Why, take a look at our little baby, and you might be getting an idea of the strength and breadth of Finn himself." Cuchulainn peeked into the cradle. "Cheer up," said the huge baby, looking back at him. "My," said Cuchulainn, "what a big boy." "While you're waiting, why not have a bite to eat?" said Una. She put some loaves of bread on the table, along with a can or 2 of butter and a pile of cabbages. Making me hungry. Cuchulainn, who was as much a glutton as he was a bully, popped a loaf into his mouth and took a huge bite, right down on one of the frying pans. Clang! "Yow!" shouted Cuchulainn. "What kind of devil's bread is this? Here are 2 of my teeth out." "That's Finn's bread, the only kind he eats," said Una. "Is it a bit too tough for you?" "Too tough for me?" shouted Cuchulainn. "I should say not. Just give me another." Cuchulainn chomped into another loaf. and into another frying pan. I'll not have a tooth left in my mouth, woman. There's 2 more out. Cuchulainn hollowed even louder. The baby began to holler too. Hungry, hungry, hungry. Ah, sweet dumpling, said Una, and she handed baby Finn a loaf. And because there was no frying pan in it, Finn ate it right down. More, said the baby, and he gobbled up another loaf. He seems like a strong lad, said Cuchulainn, getting a little worried. If this was the baby, the father must indeed be a bit stronger than Cuchulainn thought. Ah, yes, said Una, beaming. Why, instead of dollies, he loves to play with those white stones there in his cradle. Show the nice man, baby dear. Finn did as he was told. He picked up a stone that was really the cheese, and squeezed all the water out of it, and popped it into his mouth and ate it down. Cuchulainn was not to be outdone by a baby. He grabbed a stone and squeezed. He squeezed and squeezed, and squeezed as he might, he couldn't get 1 drop of water out of it. He popped it into his mouth, and with a chomp, there went the rest of his teeth. He's getting tricked. The howl that came out of him almost broke all the windows. When he finally calmed down, Cuchulainn said to Una, What kind of teeth does that lad have? They must be made of iron. Let me see your choppers, baby. At that, baby Finn opened wide his mouth, and Cuchulainn stuck in his brass finger, the very brass finger that was the secret of his strength. With a strong bite, Finn McCool bit the brass finger right off. Then up Finn leapt and began to pound the daylights out of poor, weak Cuchulainn. And that was that. Out the door went Cuchulainn, never to bother anyone, let alone Finn McCool again. Tea's ready, my love, said Una. And Finn McCool sat down with the best giant wife in the whole world, and they lived a long and happy life. The end. And here's what Tomie de Paola says. Stories about the popular Irish giant Finn McCool have been handed down from generation to generation. Perhaps Finn McCool is best known for the Giant's Causeway, the highway he built between Ireland and Scotland. The encounter between the giant Cuchulainn and Finn at Knockmany Hill is one of the funniest of Finn McCool's adventures. Tomie de Paola has chosen to use William Butler Yeats's spelling of Finn McCool. So, a true Irish spelling of Finn McCool. The end. I hope you enjoyed that. You can come and check that book out at your library. And another story about Finn McCool. This one is Finn McCool and the Great Fish. This is written or retold by Eve Bunting and illustrated by Zachray Pullen. So even though it's the same character of Finn McCool, it's told by a different storyteller and illustrated by a different artist. So you get different perspectives, and isn't that fun? Okay, Finn McCool and the Great Fish. Ah, look at the coastline of Ireland. Don't you just want to be there? And sheep, bless them, they can go all over. They go up rocks and high hills, and they're not afraid of heights, and they just trot nimbly everywhere. Let's see, where is this published? Oh, Sleeping Bear Press, an imprint of Gale. Not bad. So I didn't know that. Okay. Finn McCool and the Great Fish. Yes, in Ireland, It's the salmon of knowledge, and if you eat of it, you will have all the knowledge. Finn McCool was the biggest giant in all Ireland. He was the greatest warrior ever known, and his strength was remarkable. Look how big he is. He could lift a house and turn it around so it faced the sun, and another way at night so it faced the moon where it rose over the mountains. If the weather was bad and the men of the village were hurrying to bring in their hay before the rain set in, Finn was ready to help them. He'd lift the carts, horses and all, and carry them to shelter. Look at that. That's a very important thing, getting the hay in before it rains, because once hay is wet, it's spoiled. No cows or horses will eat it. He's the best-hearted man that ever walked on Ireland's green grass, the people said. We're blessed at having him live here with us in Drumnahoon. But they were agreed on one thing that was seldom mentioned. Finn wasn't terrible smart. He's a bit of a turnip head, they'd whisper sometimes, and smile affectionately. He doesn't know much, but he's a great big man for all that. One day, Finn heard the whisper and knew it to be true. Aww. Did you ever hear someone talking about you, and then you felt bad? It's not very nice. That's why we shouldn't talk about people. In the nearby townland lived an old man who was said to know the source of great wisdom. It was said he had promised to reveal it only to the right one. He was a bit of a mystery, staying sometimes in his house, at other times disappearing for weeks on end. Many a man and many a woman had tried to be friends with him, to wheedle the secret of knowledge out of him. Simon the baker had brought him fresh baked soda bread, the butter already thick on it. Bertie O'Hanlon brought him a white hen, the best layer in the village, so he could have fresh eggs for his breakfast of a morning. Bridie Mulligan brought him a barrow load of turf she'd cut herself in the bog. So you can have a warm fire these frosty nights, she purred. He thanked them all for their kindness, but he kept the secret to himself. What is he doing here? It was the day after Bridie's visit that Finn came to him. He couldn't fit in the house, so he sat outside, his hands resting on the roof. Old man, he called, it's Finn McCool, and I've come to ask you if you'd share the secret of wisdom with me. Look at those clouds in the sky. The old man came out, and Finn got down on his hunkers so they could see each other right. I know who you are, and I was waiting for you to come, said the old man. I know you're good and kind as well as big. I know you're a great warrior and a friend to Ireland. I know you beat the giant Cuchulainn and saved Ireland from the Scots. But I need to ask you one question. With all that you have, why do you need wisdom? A man's nothing without it, Finn said. With wisdom, I'll know better how to help my friends. I'll be able to answer their questions where now I can only shake my head. If I was wise, I could speak for Ireland when the need arose. The old man nodded. You're a giant now and a good man, but you'll be more with the grace of wisdom added to you. So listen. In the river Boyne there lives a fish, a great salmon, the red of the sky at sunset. In him is the wisdom of the world. Catch him, cook him, and eat him, and that wisdom will be yours. Thank you, sir, Finn said. That is the legend about the salmon of knowledge. 2 strides took him to the river Boyne. He dropped in his line. There were fish in the cool, gurgling waters. Brown fish, silver fish, fish with the sheen of a copper penny, but none as red as the sky at sunset. And then Finn saw the great red salmon swimming lazily upstream. Cora, Finn thought, it's as if it's looking for something. The salmon swam around the line, then took the bait and the hook. The river Boyne tossed and tumbled as Finn pulled the fish ashore. There was a mumbling and a rumbling that seemed to come from the river itself, and the idea came to Finn that the river didn't want to let go of the great fish. I'm sorry to take it, but I'm after the wisdom, Finn told the river. A man can make more use of wisdom than a fish can, so I ask you to forgive me. He took the fish in his big hand, wondering at the beauty of it. It shimmered and gleamed in the sunlight, every scale a point of fire. Finn looked in its eyes and saw the wisdom there, all the knowledge of the world. He saw life. How could he kill it? How could he eat it? The thought made him shudder. He spoke to the fish. You have the wisdom and I wanted it, but not if I have to sacrifice you, he said. The salmon's lip was bleeding from where the hook had caught in it. Ugh, I'm sorry about that, Finn said, and he carefully eased the shining hook out of the fish's mouth. But it caught in his own thumb, and the pain near blinded him. He took his thumb in his mouth and sucked on it, and he tasted something he'd never tasted before. His blood? The salmon's blood? There was a tide in him as if something unknown had entered his body, something strange and beautiful. The fish spoke. I thank you for sparing my life. I was prepared to let go of it, but now my wisdom has seeped into you along with my blood. It is known to me that you will use it in the service of others and of Ireland. Finn stared. He'd never heard a fish speak. But why did you let me catch you? For you are wise enough not to take a baited hook. Maybe I know whose hook it was. Maybe I've been waiting for you to come. Thank you, Finn said. I will use the gift well. And here he is, sucking on his thumb where the fish hook went into it, and that hurts. And the little fish in his hand, the little red fish. Gently, he laid the salmon back in the water and watched as it swam away. Was it a lighter shade of red now? There's his bloody, hurt finger. He looked at his thumb. Where the hook had pierced was already healed over, and the thumb itself was turning a delicate shade of pink. That's a little scary. That looks like an infection. Finn told no one about his encounter with the salmon of wisdom, but he felt a need to tell the old man. He found the house empty, the old man gone. The barrow load of turf sat unused. The soda bread on the kitchen table was uneaten. The eggs in the hen's nest were ungathered. But on the path was a glittering trail that might have been fish scales, every one a point of fire. Was the old man the fish? And when the old man disappeared for weeks on end, was that when he was swimming in the River Boyne? Magical things happen in Ireland. Ever After that, the people in the village of Drumnahoon remarked on how wise a man Finn had become, how he'd talked with the kings of England and the king of France and presented to them the needs and wants of Ireland, how he'd saved them from Viking longships that had crossed the sea to take Irish land, and how he knew their own problems and took care of them before they rightly knew themselves. And here he is having a toast with one of the kings. Good cheer, they call it. But still, he's the same good Finn he always was, they agreed. And here he is, carrying the hay in before the rain clouds. Isn't it a puzzle, though, the way he sucks his thumb when he's applying his mind to something? You'd almost think there was a magic to it. You almost would. I'm glad he didn't eat the fish and he got the knowledge. I love Irish stories. So come and find some more on display at the library this month in honor of St. Patrick's Day and everything Irish. And I will see you next week with another Irish story and more.